See, this is why we don't do cosplay on the show. What am I supposed to be, Darth Vader? In a bib? What is this? Anyway, hello and welcome to the Halloween episode of Anime After Hours. The Wii U sales have improved 165%. Who'd have thought that lowering the price and putting a game that everybody actually knows would increase sales. Nice job, nice job. A Deadpool movie is being discussed, but I won't be happy until Deadpool jumps out of the screen and steals my popcorn. Thor 2 is coming out in a couple of weeks, and the new antagonist is going to be fantastic. Thor is going to have to be dealing with time travel with this one. A new Mr. Peabody movie is coming out, and all the while watching the trailer, I'm thinking, great, I need my childhood even more ruined. Thank you, Hollywood. We have a great show for you tonight. A very in-depth look at horror movies as I interview Mr. Liam Lockhart, a horror movie connoisseur, and he'll tell you the 13 movies that you need to watch before Halloween of next year. And we have an interview with Rocky Horror New Mexico. But first, we have more stuff right after this. Welcome back to Anime After Hours. It's Halloween, Christian. It's Halloween, and most of us are set on watching horror movies. But if you're anything like us, we're making horror movies.
Yep.
We are making a horror movie about the Slender Man.
Yes, we are. Directed by Christian Berry.
And written by Christian Berry.
And cinematography by Christian Berry.
I'm only an actor. I don't know.
I do a lot of stuff.
He does a lot of stuff on this show too.
Producing, directing, technically I'm the cameraman.
I'm just a pretty face.
So pretty.
So pretty. Anyway, yeah, we're doing a Slender Man movie. And I think what will set this one apart is that it's not all Blair Witch status like other Slender vlogs are.
Yeah, it's somewhere in between a slasher flick and a kind of a mind fuck. A little bit of both.
It's kind of weird because we're doing it with slasher flick in mind.
Overall, but it's kind of hard to make Slender kill everybody when you don't believe he exists.
Yeah. So it's an interesting little movie. And we actually filmed the trailer for it.
This is only a preview, technically. We're actually trying to film everything by the end of summer. That way it'll be out by Halloween next year.
We've had it planned since the Halloween of last year, but now we're getting it written and we're trying to get people together. We're trying to get the whole production together.
Been stealing some stuff from the school. Not stealing as actual stealing. We're borrowing some equipment from the school.
You just like to say stealing for everything.
I do.
It sounds so wrong. You like to make everything sound so wrong.
Maybe I'm secretly a klepto. I don't know.
You're a klepto. I don't know.
A klepto, I don't know.
Klepto, I don't know.
Okay then.
Hey, this is gonna be a running gag apparently. That I don't know words.
Okay then.
Anyway, but our first trailer for our first announced feature-length movie, Slender.
Coming to theaters soon. No, it's not.
Not theaters. back to Anime After Hours, and as you can notice, we're not in our usual location. Hello. Anyway, here with me is Mr. Liam Lockhart, and you're a horror movie connoisseur.
Yes, I would say I am, Rico. I have the pleasure of teaching a course on international horror films, both here at the community college, where we're shooting right now against their green screen, and also at the University of Art and Design. They're wonderful classes. A lot of people have only been exposed really to American horror, it seems, primarily. So a chance to open up and show them some new films that they might never have seen, I think it's always exciting.
So how is the international horror compared to American horror?
Well, a very good question, and I think the answer I'm going to give you may be too simple, but it's a fundamental difference. The majority of horror films that we tend to produce in this country, if you look at the Halloween franchise or Friday the 13th, even Nightmare on Elm Street, they all seem to be embodiments of the same puritanical principles that helped found this country. You've got a killer who's represented almost as a godlike figure. He's omnipotent, omniscient, knows everything, is all-powerful, can't be stopped, can never be killed, and he's primarily out there to stop underage people from having sex. And that's it. Really, wouldn't you agree? I mean,
Yeah. That's like one of the most cliched things about slasher films, Once two people kiss, they're gonna die.
They're gonna die, exactly. Yeah. And the international films, they're a bit more broad-minded on subjects such as sexuality and things like that. And you'll find a lot more interesting messages actually being conveyed in international horror films. Messages that have to do either with political climates of the time or dealing with a person finding themselves and growing into themselves. And it's curious, but they'll pick the horror genre in which to tell these stories. And they are nowhere near as predictable as American horror films.
How do you feel about international horror films being adapted here in the U.S.?
Well, I always take it as an insult because for me it's almost saying that the American audience isn't intelligent enough to read subtitles, and I know that's not true.
Oh no, not at all.
But I mean, for instance, you're talking about all the remakes of the Japanese films. I'll take you even to a more recent one, the remake of the Swedish film, Let the Right One In.
Oh.
Which they shot here in New Mexico, actually, as Let Me In. And it was a decent remake, if you will, but it didn't have the same subtlety that the original Swedish film does. I think a lot more is left to the imagination in European horror films. There's not as much gore presented. And the frights don't come as much from visceral jumps as they come from maybe more psychological underminings. I always tell my class, you may not be scared out of your skin, but I'm going to leave you with films that will fester in your subconscious and be with you for the rest of your life. That, for me, is a good horror movie.
So, for you, horror movie is more about, the more you think about it, the scarier it becomes.
Yes.
How did you become interested in horror movies?
Wow, that's a really good question, Rico. I think it goes, I dare say, all the way back to when I was a young boy. I have an Irish grandmother, and I spent a lot of my time, listening to her stories. She had the gift of second sight. She claimed that she was able to see spirits, and I believed her, of course. Why wouldn't I? And she would regale me with all of her ghost stories growing up, and I came to believe that ghosts were a real part of my existence. It wasn't until I got older and learned that so many other people didn't believe in ghosts that I thought to myself, well, this is rather strange. As far as I was concerned, they were a truism. And I guess that always led me kind of more into the dark side and exploring those areas. People often ask me, they say, you seem like such a happy person. Why would you be attracted to the horror genre? And I think sometimes we need to get in touch with the dark aspects just so we can appreciate the lighter aspects better.
So, a popular genre in American horror is now the found footage movies.
Yes.
The Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity. How do you think those affect the genre of horror?
Wow. Well, to be quite honest with you, when I first saw Blair Witch Project and I saw it in a theater, I left with a massive headache. and very little respect for the film, I'm sorry to say. I mean, I know it's been well received and has a big following. But by the other token, I really enjoyed the Paranormal Activity movies.
Really?
Yes, I do. I think there's something to be said, and this applies to both films. I think it's just because the camera is a lot steadier in Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as handheld as Blair Witch. The fact that everything is played out within the concept of real time,
Yeah.
I think that always adds to the heightening of suspense and tension. Given the fact, too, that it is shot, with a supposedly unmanned camera, all the action plays out within the one shot. We're so used these days to going to films, be they horror or action, where if there's a fight sequence, most of the dynamics are built by the editing.
Yeah.
Close-up of the punch hitting the face or the knife stabbing the body, this and that. But in Paranormal Activity, it's all playing out in a master shot. So you don't feel as though you're being manipulated as much by the editor, because you're looking at something that you think, oh my goodness, this is happening in real time, in a real space.
Yeah.
You're seeing everything. There's nothing hidden from your view. I think it helps to pack a stronger punch.
Oh, wow. This has been very enlightening, and thank you for coming on to our show, letting us do this interview, and doing the segment that you'll be doing later on in the show. But for now, we'll go on to a break and get on to our second guest. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you, Rico. When Rico approached me to come up with a list of films to recommend for Halloween, I said, well, I'm going to go beyond just the normal titles that we're used to seeing. It seems like you can't turn around without seeing either Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, those franchises, the remakes of those franchises. My goodness, there's so much more to the world of horror than just American cinema. And I want to turn you on now to 13 titles of international horror films that I think you'll appreciate. The first one, kind of a gentle introduction, if you will, to the genre. It's the film Theatre of Blood from 1973, a British production directed by Douglas Hickox and starring Vincent Price. This is a wonderful film. It is the story of an actor who has been passed over for years by the critics for all of his performances of Shakespeare. He commits suicide publicly in front of them, actually survives the attempt, and comes back to exact revenge on all of these critics who have ruined his career. But the way he chooses to do it is by reenacting famous death scenes from Shakespearean dramas. The next film I'd like to recommend is also a little on the tame side, also with literary references. It's a 1984 film by the Irish director Neil Jordan, the movie The Company of Wolves, starring Angela Lansbury. In this film, it's a retelling of the Little Red Riding Hood story. I think they do about 4 or 5 variations of it. Actually, the source material is from Angela Carter, the famous British writer, who specialized in taking old fairy tales, folk stories, and readapting them to more contemporary times. Here we have warnings of the danger of straying from the path, and beware of men whose eyebrows meet in the middle. I want to take us back to 1964, to a little film made by Kenito Shindo called Oni Baba. This simple tale is all about 2 women, a mother and a daughter-in-law, whose son and husband, respectively, has died in a war, and they are left to fend for themselves. Now, the older woman needs the younger woman to survive, just to get the basic food and stuff in. They actually have a tendency to go out and kill roaming samurai warriors that are finding their way back from the battle. They throw their bodies into a pit, strip them of their belongings, and then sell them in return for food. One day a man comes into the life and starts to upset this balance. He's got his eyes on the daughter-in-law, and the mother, fearing that she's going to lose this source of income, devises a scheme to keep her daughter-in-law from straying. It got to the point where Mario Bava said, enough is enough. Basta, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to make the Giallo film to end all Giallo films. It's going to be so outrageous and ridiculous that it's going to put an end to the genre itself. He would produce a movie in 1971 called Twitch of the Death Nerve, and it did anything but end the genre. In fact, all of his great plans and ambitions to finally put it to rest would actually give birth to the slasher genre that we know and love so well over here in this country. If you have the chance to see Twitch of the Death Nerve, and I hope you will, notice the similarities. Practically every murder in that film is recreated in Friday the 13th. So go check out the original. Let's go to the prince of Italian horror, that being Dario Argento. He also started off his career by making films in the Giallo genre, but really what audiences know him most for is his 1977 film Suspiria, starring American actress Jessica Harper as a young girl who joins a ballet academy and soon finds out that it's really home to a coven of witches. Another recommendation from Italy is Cemetery Man by Michele Soavi from 1994, starring Rupert Everett as the caretaker of a cemetery where the dead have a really bad habit of coming back to life. But this film is not just a simple zombie story. It goes into metaphysical regions that are just unbelievable. A really beautiful, surreal expression. The art direction, just stunning, superb. Not only do you get visceral jolts in this film, you actually think. It's a wonderful film, a combination of humor, action, horror, gore. What more could you ask for? Cemetery Man. The Innocence, starring Deborah Kerr. This is actually based on a short story written by Henry James called The Turn of the Screw. Henry James was a leading American writer at the turn of the 20th century. His brother, William James, was not only the father of American psychiatry, but also the first president of the American Paranormal Society, intent on proving whether or not there was life after death. The Turn of the Screw was a story that Henry James wrote in honor of his brother William, and it's a wonderful tale indeed. Deborah Kerr plays a governess in charge of two children who may or may not be possessed by the ghosts of the former governess and the stable hand. Another wonderful ghost story, this time from 1980 from Canada, is the movie The Changeling, starring George C. Scott. A recently widowed musician, he lost his wife and his daughter in a horrible car accident, moves into this old mansion while he is teaching music at this nearby university, only to discover that he is not alone, that there is actually the ghost of a young boy haunting the house. He must try to solve the mystery as to why this child's spirit remains and hopefully free him into the afterlife. And a third ghost story to throw out your way, and this is kind of a ghost story and also a story dealing with the internal mind and the madness. It's a film from South Korea from 2003, the movie A Tale of Two Sisters. Two young girls and an evil stepmother living in this house together and haunted by these misdeeds from the past. Roman Polanski's The Tenant from 1976. Shot in France, in Paris, Polanski stars himself as a young man who moves into this apartment building where the previous occupant, a young woman, had committed suicide. And he soon finds himself slowly turning into this previous occupant. Is it all in his mind? Or are the neighbors conspiring in some demonic sense to turn him into this previous tenant? Watch the movie, decide for yourself. It's a winner. And speaking about the inner mind, probably one of the most unsettling films I ever saw as a child was the movie The Other from 1972, not to be confused with The Others with Nicole Kidman. This is a much earlier film, a much simpler story. Two young boys growing up in the country around the turn of the century, and they are involved in playing these mental mind games, and they can actually project themselves into other bodies, if you will. Again, this is a movie that I can't reveal too much of without giving away the story, but treat yourself to it. France had long denied that they made horror films. It was a genre they wouldn't touch. That's so different from the movies that they're turning out these days. Films such as High Tension or Martyrs or Frontiers, really pushing the envelope in terms of gore and violence. Let's go back to a simpler time. Their very first entry into the genre would be Eyes Without a Face, directed by Georges Franju. This is a beautiful little tale, I can honestly say that, with a lot of surreal elements to it. The story of a doctor who's responsible for a car accident that disfigures his daughter, and now he's intent on trying to find a new face to replace the one that she lost, regardless of how many victims it might take. Eyes Without a Face, a carnival atmosphere, a surreal, fun-like ride to it. It is going to burn images into your consciousness that will stay with you forever. And now my final film to recommend is a film that has actually made its way to my top 10 list of the greatest films ever made. And that is a work coming out of Mexico by the filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky, a Chilean surrealist who would bring us the masterpiece Sangre in 1989. This film is about a young boy whose parents both work for the circus. He grows up in that environment. A terrible murder takes place, causes him to lose his mind, get put into an insane asylum. He escapes from it a few years later, back on the street, seemingly a normal person, but how can he be after the scarring from his childhood? You have never seen a motion picture like Sangre, regardless of genres. This movie is compelling in every aspect, from its art direction, its incredible cinematography, and a kick-ass soundtrack, if I can say that on the air. Sangre, one of my all-time favorite films. I know it's going to be a treat for you as well. So I hope you'll have a chance to check out any or all of these 13 films, and may they find a way into your subconsciousness, into your very soul, and may they stay with you for the rest of your lives.
Welcome back to Anime After Hours, our special Halloween episode. And here with me is the cast of Rocky Horror New Mexico.
How we doing?
So for those virgins among our audience, what is the shadow cast of Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Oh, well, the shadow cast essentially is a group of players or actors who are designated as specific actors from the film and recreate what's happening on the film, on the screen, to the stage. A lot of the term shadow cast really comes from the screen being behind the characters and the actors being out casting a shadow on the screen. So that pretty common terminology. We don't do that often. I think once a year we'll probably do a true shadow cast, but we're still the same thing. We have our actors on the stage doing a full stage show with the film.
And during the filming, you guys kind of rip into the movie a little bit. How do you write, or how do you decide like what to say during certain parts of the film?
Callbacks, yeah. That's an organic thing. I've been doing cast since 1988, and I picked up what's known as a litany. But I pick up lines. It's a personal choice thing, really. It's more which ones you like, which ones you don't like. I mean, over the years, I think I picked up enough that I could basically talk over the entire movie if I wanted to, but that's a bit much.
And, I mean, it's a horrible film. I'm sorry, it really is not a great film. The music's fun, but you go and you see it, and you start hearing the callbacks, and some of them are very dated. You know, there was an old callback that's like, front row sucks, back row swallows, tastes great, less filling. Old Budweiser commercial, beer commercial. And you don't hear it as much because it phased out. And then some of the newer callbacks, you've got the one about 10 points for Gryffindor, right?
Yeah.
So we do that one, and and now it's almost 10 years old, but his name is Robert Paulson, which is a reference to Meatloaf, who was Bob with Bitch Chips from Fight Club. So they kind of mature with what's going on, but the asshole slut pretty much stay the same. There are some that
fucking neck.
Yeah, no fucking neck.
Yeah.
And will probably remain the entire time we do this. It's just the certain as the cast matures, as the times mature, some of the callbacks change, but really, it's just you see the film so much, you find those little gaps every chance, and there are so many that happen that you can't get them all, and then it's just crazy.
So it happens organically. You've alluded that you've been with this since the 80s, and not necessarily in New Mexico. From my understanding, this happens all throughout America. Groups like this. Were you part of any other groups before you went here to New Mexico?
The first cast I did was the Denton Affair in Santa Cruz, California. Then it was Erotic Nightmares in Palo Alto, California. Then Crazy Imagination in Buffalo. Then there was the Purple Onion cast, which was here before us, and then us.
In Rocky Horror, New Mexico, yeah. For me, I was in Phoenix. I was with Broadway Bound and Gag. Broadway Bound and Gag came to an end, and we started B.O.B., which was Band on Broadway, which is kind of a play on the old cast. And we did we started to change how we were doing Rocky then. Rocky, up to that point in Phoenix, was a shadow cast. And I really wanted to push the envelope of doing more of a stage show with the movie as secondary. Really trying to get actors up there and performers who could bring more out of it and really draw the audience into the stage show. So when I started Rocky Horror New Mexico here 3 years ago, just somebody had never seen the film, said they wanted to see it, and said, hey, let's show it at the Guild. I'm like, if you're going to show it at the Guild, you got to have a cast. If you're going to have a cast, I'll help get some people together. And I go, and if we're going to do it, we're not doing it once. We're just going to run with it until it dies, basically. And here we are, just running away.
And these shows, we just got back from a recent show. These shows are really fast and loose. Really, I guess it would be pushing it to say very audience participation oriented. What is the craziest thing that has happened during these shows?
Oh man.
There's one time in Buffalo we actually had, because it's traditional, well, they don't do it so much nowadays, but everyone used to use lighters for There's a Light. And we had one guy, they go, there's a light, and boosh, this guy brought in a flamethrower. And so it was like, and just stunned the entire audience. And then, because we were doing it Friday and Saturday night, he came back again the next night, and we were ready for him. So when he goes, there's a light, he goes, boosh. Half the cast runs up with like marshmallows and hot dogs and just sits there and starts roasting them.
Wow.
Rocky Horror gets crazy. It really does. And not only does the audience get crazy, the cast gets crazy. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We had in Phoenix one of our Rockies was just stoned. Just crazy, crazy stoned. And he wore a thong instead of a gold pair of underwear. So he wore a thong. We're at dinner scene. He's sitting on the floor and he realizes that his thong is on incorrectly and all of his stuff is just hanging out. It's just out and about. And he stands up and the whole audience sees it. And he's standing there trying to shift his thong, thinking he's just going to rotate over and cover him up. And it was horrible. Crazy as hell. But every cast, something like that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for sitting down with us after a show and giving us this interview. This is Anime After Hours on YouTube, on pretty much everywhere we can do it. Thank you guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
And after this, we have our special band, Stealing Hearts. We'll see you after this. And now, Anime After Hours is proud to present the weather. to an end. But remember, anime and fiction in general is meant to be celebrated. So go out and watch more anime to fulfill what you think is missing inside. But until next time, good night, Anime After Hours. Good night.
What's your favorite